Well, cruising right along, the Enterprise comes across another ship, but all the crew's dead because they prematurely aged rapidly. Well, it turns out they were exposed to some sort of viral infection that causes this. Eventually, they track it down to this experimental station that's, well, involved in eugenics. Now, with Khan and everything, the narrative of the history of the Star Trek world is that there were these eugenics wars, and so the procedure and whatnot is banned. You're not supposed to be involved in it, and yet this never comes up in it. I mean, it's so they produced all these children who are perfect in every way, and they're telepathic and all this stuff, and like a 12-year-old looks like he's in his 20s. They rapidly age, apparently, but I guess they're gonna live a long time. I don't know, but that wasn't it. It was one of the crew members from the other ship had arrived there and had come down with some alien flu. It wasn't all that serious. He had recovered, but he was still carrying it. And when he came in contact with these, eugenics kids, their antibodies are very, very aggressive and attacked the viral infection and then attacked everyone else. So the staff at the station began to rapidly age. And then the ship, they took off and they all contracted this attack from the antibodies and died of old age on the ship. So there was all this business about quarantine and everything, and that was it. That's fine how that plays out. And Dr. Pulaski is desperate to find a cure for this. And then there's more development between her and Picard finds out that she actually took the chance to get on the Enterprise because she had secretly admired him and stuff. I don't know if they were going anywhere with that, but but nevertheless, Pulaski is looking for a solution here and ends up having to quarantine herself in a shuttlecraft so the ship won't be, endangered, along with Data and one of the quote-unquote children. But she's immediately exposed to it, and even though she couldn't detect it or anything, and suddenly she starts rapidly aging. So she beams down to the planet, and they're trying to come up with something. And then, of course, you do the old age makeup on her, even though she was kind of an old lady at the time anyway, but older, So it's a race against, time to try to save her and stuff. And interestingly enough, they came up with the idea of the transporter, which is one thing I always come back to is one of the giant plot holes in Star Trek is that the transporter is literally the power of God. Because the idea is, hey, we could filter out her current state and restore her to how she was with her patterns. But she very rarely used the transporter. She's like Dr. McCoy. They just stole that idea. She didn't like it. And her previous ship, she was on, Picard contacted them, and they said, "Nah, sorry, we deleted all that. We don't have any record of her patterns." And he's like, "Oh, damn." So it was interesting that they went there because the cartoon, the animated series, another story where the crew, these women were siphoning off the life force of the men, and they would rapidly age, and so they used the transporter to restore them to how they looked before they beamed to their planet. And so you're like, oh well, look at that, you could do anything with it. So that's ultimately what they end up doing, but they just had to figure out the right filter and whatnot, and they didn't have the pattern for her, so they find her DNA. So they went snooping through, her drawers and stuff and found a brush with hair in it. And there you go. They were able to come up and rearrange her atoms, within the transporter to restore her to how she looked. Of course, I suppose he could have kept going and make her look like she's 25 like she did on the old show. Like, oh, well, suddenly Picard's very interesting. But so that was the solution for it. But then it's like, these eugenics kids that you did in violation, I would think, but they never bring this up. It just says, hey, we found a cure for the problem, but you're still going to be infecting people. So, yeah, you're going to have to constantly be stuck in get into the transporter pad to fix you. So, a lot about it, just for the character interaction, was good and solid and all that. But these are things that offer questions that they don't even acknowledge, It should be a problem, but then again, the transporter in and of itself, like I said, unless you would come up with some finagled reason as to why. Here, it was just a matter of, well, we didn't have her pattern, so, we almost couldn't do it. But then they realized, well, we just need a record of her DNA, and then we rewrite it. So they do it, and it's like, well, the thing works, so of course they would be able to do this, But then the other thing is that essentially that's what these Frankensteins were doing, And they think, it couldn't possibly be something we did. And yeah, it was, But, how realistic is that a bunch of scientists working on something that could be very dangerous to humanity in a lab? What are the odds something like that could occur? Oh, well. But this one of the two that I watched had more strength to it. The next one is very basic and simple. They do this officer exchange deal. And Riker gets volunteers himself to serve on a Klingon ship. So he gets some tips from Worf, and he starts eating Klingon cuisine, which everyone else says is disgusting, but Riker seems to take to it, So he goes to the Klingon ship. Of course, on the Klingon ship, you have to eat stuff that's still alive and stuff like that. But the main thing, it's obvious, he has to get in fights with the guys. They won't respect him unless he beats the crap out of them. And one guy, he beats the crap and he becomes his best buddy. Yet again, another pathogen is discovered, but the idiot officer decides, because whatever, it doesn't matter. He was some guy who was about the same age as Will. Will thought he was, or not Will, Wesley thought he was the same student from the previous Academy episode they did when met, but no, he just looks alike. So Wesley, well, you're a bigot. I don't really know this. Whatever. And the guy just doesn't understand how to interact with the command structure of the Enterprise, which is odd. He's in Starfleet. They didn't prepare him for this. And he said, well, on our home planet, yeah, but this is Starfleet. You're interacting with other aliens and stuff, and Starfleet has its own regulations and whatnot. It just wasn't that good. So he sees something very disturbing on the Klingon ship, but doesn't report it because he felt he had to figure out how to deal with it before he even mentions it, which is pretty stupid no matter how you put it. So, of course, there's this problem. The Klingons discover it and decide it must have been an attack from the Enterprise. So they decide they're going to attack the Enterprise themselves in response. Riker is like, no, it couldn't be them, but he has to prove his loyalty to them. I mean, it's just, no. They would end up having to lock him up, or they'd just kill him, And just because the other guy kind of liked him, it's just not going to work. So, they go through the routine of this type of story, but I just don't think it was very good. That's about it, So the Klingon stories do get better later on, but they're still kind of stumbling with those at this point. But so of the two, Unnatural Selection was better. A Matter of Honor, it was pretty predictable that's what he had to do, but the ultimate plot of them suspecting an attack by the Enterprise and all that, don't think they would. And they certainly, granted in their protocol that he had outfoxed the captain, so he becomes captain of the ship. Not buying it. He'd only been there a couple of minutes. But anyway, there you go. 2 more adventures for the next generation.